Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Jennings, and I will be giving you a speech on the different computer components and what they do, how they affect performance, and things like that. Now, I'm sure at some point throughout the day, uh, throughout the whole week, that each and every one of us interacts with a computer at some point throughout our day, whether it's in the morning for work, at home for work, now that teleworking is a thing, for school, pretty much for almost anything. Our phones are computers at this point. Pretty much anything technological wise is in some way a computer. And I will be going over just the important components, what they do, things like that. Uh, so over the past couple years, I have built three computers. Ever since 2017, I've built three computers. I've helped my family build and upgrade theirs. I've helped some friends, so I seem pretty knowledgeable and able to talk about this sort of stuff. I'm gonna go over first uh, what role components are. I'm sorry, and in my personal opinion of importance, and then later on I'm going to explain the relevance of how they can be used in real life, even if you aren't interested in computers and stuff. How important it could be to have some knowledge about them, since we work with them almost every day, and at some point during the day. So first off, I'm going to be going over the processor, which is known as the CPU, which essentially is the brain of the computer, and in my personal opinion, probably the most important part of any computer is the processor. Now, the two biggest companies out there right now that produce these are AMD and Intel, which are the two biggest computer production retailers out there right now. And in an article by Ralph Nate, he's an author for PC World Reviewing. He mentions, in your search for hardware, start with the CPU, which I think we can all agree is probably the most important part. Now that we talked about the brain of the computer, let's move on to the motherboard and the importance of that. Now, the motherboard could be compared to as the spine of the computer, as it connects every single component in the computer, and it goes into the motherboard. Now, when you're looking for motherboards, you want to make sure that your CPU is compatible with the motherboard and vice versa. Now, different motherboards have different options, like number of USB ports for chargers, your mouse, your keyboard, things like that. Different RAM slots, which is like memory, and then PCIe slots, which could be like graphics cards, internet cards, USB expansion slots, things like that. In another article by Ralph Nate, newer motherboards support USB 3.0, which I don't know if you guys have ever noticed. The blue USB ports, it means like faster data transfer, things like that. Excuse me. It might not be the most expensive part, but it definitely is a more important part. I wouldn't cheap out on that. Next up, moving from the power supply, or moving from the motherboard onto the power supply, which is pretty self-explanatory. And this could be compared to the heart of the computer, as it provides power to the entire system, which is obviously pretty important. In a article by Rafael Avila, putting together your own computer, your choice of power supply is simple and depends on the amount of internal hardware you intend to add to your system. Now, the more stuff you have in your computer, it's obviously going to be more power hungry, which would mean you want a bigger power supply. Now, most normal like work computers only draw like 200 to 300 watts, but if you want to get into gaming or like 3D rendering, that's when you want to get into like the 5, 6, even 700 watts of power. Um, Now, all power supplies are either modular, semi-modular, or non-modular, and the difference is fully modular means none of the cables come pre-installed. You can kind of plug and play which ones you need and which ones you want. And then non-modular means every single cable comes plugged in and you can't change them, which means maybe less cable management. It might be cleaner to wire it up and stuff. It takes out some guessing work. It just depends. Now that we've gone over some of the more important components, let's go over some still important, but I wouldn't say as important. So first off, we got RAM, which is random access memory. So to cut it short, it pretty much means anything that's held for a quick burst of information. Like if anybody has like 30 tabs of like Google Chrome open and they have Spotify open, things like that. Another less important but still important thing is storage. You have HDDs, which are mechanical hard drives. They're cheaper, yet they're slower. And then solid state drives, which are SSDs, are a little bit more expensive, but you get more speed after that. And last but not least, the graphics card, which is mostly for like gaming or like 3D rendering, like graphic heavy programs. Now you don't need a graphics card if you just want a computer for like schoolwork or homework or whatever. But if you do like engineering or like 3D rendering, you definitely need one of those. Now, everyone might not be interested in building computers or knowledge of building them, but there's tons of practical benefits as most people interact with computers at some point during their day. It would be nice to have at least some knowledge on like what could be wrong or why is my computer so slow, just things like that I just went over. In conclusion, I briefly just went over some of the more important computer parts and what they do. I explained the processor, how it's the brain of the computer, the motherboard or the spine, which holds all the connections for the components, and the power supply, which is the heart, which gives power to everything, to the whole computer. And then some less important parts, yet still pretty important. And that's everything. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.